Welcome. Two shadows never sleep. Here night never ends. And every story hides something waiting to be found. From haunted houses buried deep in forgotten American towns, to Halloween nights that went horribly wrong, and old legends whispered by those who claimed they saw something right before the lights went out. So sit back, turn off the lights, and let the shadows tell you what they've been keeping.
There's a good reason some local legends are left unspoken. On the shores of Hollow Lake, you won't find any ghost stories, no tragedies recorded in any public forum, no folklore in the archives, official records, silent. We always figured that meant nothing ever happened there. We were dead wrong. This story you're about to hear was cobbled together from a handful of recovered audio files and a single, disparate email. It's about a team of paranormal investigators who went to debunk a myth that didn't even officially exist. They found a truth that was far more terrifying instead. And the bride, well, the bride won't let anyone live to tell her tale. This is a story that was never meant to be told. The team called themselves Spectral Solutions. You had Liam, the pragmatic leader and tech-obsessed founder. His belief in ghosts was matched only by his drive to capture one on camera. Then there was Maya, the group's researcher and dedicated skeptic. Her job was to find the logical reason for every bump in the night, to keep everyone's feet on the ground. And finally, there was Chloe. She was an empath, one who felt these places on a level no equipment could ever measure. Their YouTube channel was built on chasing small-town haunting, but they wanted this trip to be different. They picked the cabin at Hollow Lake because it had no horror stories. This was supposed to be their control episode, quiet weekend to recalibrate their gear, film the silence, and prove that not every dark corner has a ghost hiding in it. They pulled up on a crisp autumn afternoon. The cabin was just like the pictures, rustic, isolated, and sitting right on the edge of the glassy, unnervingly still water. The air smelled of pine and damp earth, and the quiet was absolute. As they unpacked their equipment, MF meters, thermal cameras, audio recorders, Maya actually smiled. "I have to admit, Liam," she said, "it's beautiful here. I'm predicting 3 days of absolutely no evidence and a whole lot of sleep." Liam, busy with a camera lens, just nodded. "Let's hope, but we stick to the procedure." Chloe, however, wasn't smiling. She stood by the big window overlooking the lake, rubbing her arms. She didn't say a word, but you could see it in her eyes. She felt something, a deep, ancient sadness coming from the water, like the feeling of being left behind forever. That first night went exactly as Maya predicted. It was boring. The audio recorders picked up nothing but the wind in the trees. The EMF meters stayed dark. They all shared a meal, laughing and planning shots for their debunked episode. But as the night crept in, the little things started to feel wrong. Liam kept catching a faint, sweet smell, almost like wet, decaying flowers, that would appear and vanish inside the sealed cabin. Later, he was reviewing thermal footage and found a single, cold spot right by the window where Chloe had been standing. It was a perfect, human-shaped patch of deep blue that just hung in the air for a few minutes before fading away. Chloe got quieter and more withdrawn. She said she felt a crushing sorrow, a feeling of waiting for someone who was never coming back. Maya, ever the skeptic, had an answer for all of it. The smell, mold in the old floorboards, the cold spot, a draft from the window. Chloe's feelings, just a psychological reaction to the isolation. She wrote it all down in her notebook, satisfied. The next day, they drove to the nearby town for supplies. It was a small, tight-knit place where everyone seemed to know everyone. The locals were polite, but it felt brittle. When Liam casually asked the guy at the general store if there were any stories about the lake, the man's smile just vanished. "It's just a lake," he said, his eyes darting away. "Been here forever. Nothing to tell." They got the same kind of response from everyone. An old woman watering her plants literally turned her back on them when they mentioned the cabin. The town's absolute refusal to have any stories was more unsettling than any ghost tale. The silence wasn't empty. It was heavy, like it was on purpose. For the first time, Maya felt a real prickle of unease. That night, everything fell apart. Around 2 a.m., A piercing scream from Chloe's room ripped Liam and Maya out of their sleep. They found her sitting straight up in bed, shaking, her eyes wide with terror. "She was here," Chloe whispered, her voice cracking, standing right there, in a white dress. It was all torn and soaking wet. She pointed to the foot of her bed. On the dry, wooden floor, a small puddle of water was slowly forming out of nowhere. Liam bolted to his monitors. "Every camera, every recorder, they're all dead," he said, his voice full of disbelief. 4 cameras, 3 audio recorders, all on their own battery packs, had all shut down at the exact same time. As he said it, their whole array of EMF meters and the REM pod by the window suddenly roared, 2 lifelights flashing, alarms blaring in a chaotic screech for 3 seconds before they, too, went completely dead. Their batteries were totally drained. CTA, what they went through next is hard to fully grasp. A dive into a kind of terror that doesn't play by any rules. If you find these kinds of warnings from the shadows compelling, think about subscribing for more stories from the edge of what we know. Now, let's get back to the darkness at Hollow Lake. The illusion of a calm weekend was shattered. This wasn't a draft. It wasn't in their heads. The simultaneous equipment failure was something Maya had no rational explanation for. And that cold, unfamiliar feeling of fear finally found her. Liam, pale but determined, decided they had to try and make contact. "If something's here," he said, "it obviously wants our attention." They gathered in the main room, using only flashlights to cut through the dark. Liam set up his spirit box, a device that scans radio frequencies, which some believe spirits can manipulate to speak. He held a digital recorder right next to it and took a deep breath. "Is there anyone here with us? Can you tell us your name?" The static hissed, and then a voice, thin and crying, broke through. It was chillingly clear. "WASN, single quotes T, ... there." Goosebumps shot up Maya's arms. It was a woman, weeping. Liam, his own voice, shaky but steady, pressed on. "Why are you here? What is it that you want?" The replies came back in broken, desperate pieces. "Waited, ... the vow, ... so cold, ... my ... love, ... Then, Chloe whispered, she was supposed to be married, right here, by the lake, but he never showed up. The second those words left Chloe's lips, the spirit box went dead silent, and then a new voice came through, distorted, cold, and filled with a rage that was nothing like the weeping. It hissed a single, terrifying phrase, "Dawn, ... tell." In that exact same instant, a deafening bang slammed against the front door, shaking the entire cabin. They all cried out in shock. Their flashlights flickered once and died, plunging them into absolute, suffocating blackness. The only sound was the frantic drumming of their own hearts. And then, another sound, a slow, wet, dragging noise from just outside the door, followed by the heartbreaking sound of a woman sobbing. "She's outside," Chloe gasped, trembling so hard she could barely speak. "She knows we heard her. She won't let us tell anyone. That's why there are no stories. She stops them." Liam scrambled to the window, trying to see through the darkness toward the lake. The clouds shifted just enough for a sliver of moonlight to hit the shore, and there she was, a figure, just as Chloe had described, a woman in a tattered, decaying wedding gown, standing at the water's edge. Her form shimmered, but her presence was heavy, undeniable. She was staring right at the cabin. They couldn't make out her face, but they could feel the crushing weight of her grief and a rage that had been festering for an eternity. The legend of Hollow Lake wasn't just unrecorded, it was brutally enforced. The time for investigation was over. This was about survival. "We have to go, now," Maya screamed. Her skepticism burned away by pure terror. They didn't even think about their thousands of dollars of equipment. They grabbed their phones and keys and ran for the door. The moment they threw it open, the air turned ice cold, stealing the breath from their lungs. The sobbing was closer now, seeming to come from every direction at once. They fumbled their way to the car, Liam jamming the key in the ignition. He turned it. Nothing. Just a dead click. He tried again. The battery was drained, just like everything else in the cabin. A flicker of movement caught Maya's eye. The bride was moving toward them from the shore. She wasn't walking. She was gliding, her ruined dress dragging behind her like a funeral shroud. Her pace was agonizingly slow, but it was relentless. The woods, Liam screamed, remembering a small service road they'd seen on the map. It's our only way out. Run! They abandoned the dead car and plunged into the pitch-black forest. The sound of weeping followed them, a constant, mournful beacon for whatever was chasing them. Branches seemed to whip at their faces out of nowhere. Unseen roots grabbed at their ankles. It felt less like a chase and more like a cruel game. The woods themselves felt alive, like they were working with the bride to herd them, to get them lost in the suffocating dark with only the sound of her sorrow for company. Conclusion: only 2 of them made it out of those woods. When dawn finally broke, a trucker found Liam and Maya stumbling onto the main highway, hysterical, bloody, and covered in mud. They tried to tell the police their story, a frantic, incoherent mess about a vengeful spirit, a dead car, and their missing friend. A dead car, and their missing friend. But the authorities found nothing. The cabin at Hollow Lake was pristine, as if no one had ever been there. All of their expensive gear was gone. The rental car, it started on the first try. The people in town, when questioned, swore they'd never seen the 3 of them. There was no evidence a crime took place, no proof Chloe had ever been there. Except for the words of her 2 traumatized friends. Chloe was officially listed as a missing person. The assumption was she had a psychological episode and simply wandered off into the wilderness. It had been almost a year since anyone mentioned Hollow Lake online. The few threads that once existed on paranormal forums were wiped, either deleted by moderators or mysteriously gone without notice. No one talked about the missing investigators anymore. Not publicly. Not since one of the forum admins vanished too. After posting a single line, "She's still waiting." That was when Dark Truth Investigations decided to get involved. They weren't ghost hunters like Spectral Solutions had been. They called themselves Truth Documentarians, led by Ethan Cole, a former journalist with a reputation for chasing dangerous stories. They didn't believe in the supernatural. They believed in cover-ups, corruption, hidden crimes, dressed up as legends. Hollow Lake had all the ingredients for a perfect expose: missing people, erased files, a town that refused to talk. Ethan was certain it was no ghost. He was sure someone in that town was hiding something far worse. With him were 3 others: Harper, the team's camera operator and drone specialist; Jonah, their tech wizard; and Sarah, a local from a nearby county who had reached out claiming to have heard the missing team's last recordings before they vanished. She was quiet, cautious, and strangely reluctant to even speak the name Hollow Lake out loud. Ethan convinced her it was all superstition. By the time they reached the narrow forest road that led to the lake, her hands were trembling. "Ethan," she said softly, staring out the window at the shifting trees, "I know you don't believe in this stuff, but the town doesn't just avoid talking about Hollow Lake. They forget, like literally forget. My aunt used to live there. She told me once that there's something about the place that makes memories slip away. If you try to remember too much, it takes it from you." Ethan smirked, adjusting his camera harness. "Perfect. That's exactly what I need. An amnesia town. Great headline." Jonah laughed from the back seat. "Guess we'll jog their memory." But Harper didn't laugh. She was watching the lake come into view, a gray mirror under a flat, clouded sky. The cabin stood there, still and silent, exactly as it had looked in the last known photo the previous team had uploaded before going dark. They parked and began unloading equipment: body cams, night vision, digital recorders, motion sensors, and a new prototype Jonah had built, a live data sync rig that uploaded every second of footage to an encrypted cloud server in real time. "So if anything happens to us," he said, grinning, "someone out there will see it." They started filming before sundown. The cabin creaked as they entered, the air inside stale but strangely untouched. There were no signs of damage or vandalism. The furniture was still in place. The faint outline of where a camera tripod had once stood was still marked by the dust. On one of the wooden beams above the fireplace, Harper noticed faint scratches. She leaned closer and whispered, "Ethan, this looks like letters." Carved into the wood, barely visible, were the words, "Don't tell." Ethan's smile faltered. Must have been one of the missing team members. Scare tactic or warning. Sarah stepped backward, her breathing quickening. "We should go. I don't want to be here after dark." "Exactly why we stay," Ethan replied. "Sunsets when the truth shows up." That night, the wind barely moved. The water outside looked frozen, even though it wasn't. Harper set up a drone for aerial shots. Jonah calibrated the sensors. Ethan did his opening monologue for the camera. Standing by the lake, Hollow Lake, a place with no history, no crime, no folklore at least. That's what the official records say. But 3 people came here last fall and never returned. Their car was found, their names erased from the locals' memory, and the only evidence left behind. He held up a printed transcript of the recovered audio, is a voice saying, "Don't tell. Tonight, we find out what no one else will." As if on cue, the wind picked up, whispering across the lake like something exhaling. Hours passed with nothing. The forest stood silent, except for the occasional rustle of branches. The team grew restless, whispering among themselves. Around 1:13 a.m., Jonah's laptop pinged. "Motion alert," he said. Camera 3 picked something up near the shoreline. They crowded around the screen. A faint figure, pale and blurry, stood at the edge of the water. Long shape, human-sized, static rippled through the feed for just a second, and then the image vanished. "Could be fog," Ethan said. "Fog doesn't stand still," Harper whispered. Jonah frowned. "Playback's corrupted." They rushed outside. The shoreline was empty. The moon slipped behind a cloud. For a long moment, there was only the sound of the lake lapping at the sand. Soft, rhythmic, almost like breathing. Harper's flashlight caught something glinting near the water. She bent down and picked it up. It was a gold wedding ring, rusted and cold. Sarah gasped. "That's hers." Ethan turned to her sharply. "Who's the bride?" she whispered. "That's the story. She drowned on her wedding night, waiting for her fiancé. When he never came, she walked into the lake, still wearing her dress." Ethan rolled his eyes. Urban legend. Someone planted this. But when he tried to film the ring, the camera refused to focus. The lens clicked and adjusted but stayed blurry. He tapped the viewfinder, frustrated. The second he said, "What the hell is wrong with this?" the reflection in the lens shifted. It wasn't his face anymore. It was a woman's, wet, pale, and expressionless, right behind him. Harper screamed. He spun around. Nothing was there. They all bolted back to the cabin. Jonah's equipment was glitching wildly, data streams spiking with random bursts of white noise and temperature drops. He stared at the monitors. "Something's jamming the signal," he muttered. "It's like the system's being flooded." A whisper broke through the speakers. A woman's voice. "Waited so long." Sarah covered her ears, tears streaming. "She's here. We shouldn't have come." "Keep recording," Ethan barked. "We're not leaving." Then the door slammed shut. Every window in the cabin frosted over in seconds. The temperature plunged. Harper's breath came out in thick white clouds. The whispering grew louder, multiplying, until it sounded like 100 voices all crying and begging in unison. Jonah's laptop screen flickered, showing a live feed from the lake drone. The drone camera was still recording, and it was moving, slowly, deliberately. It turned toward the water, hovering inches above the surface. Then, out of the black reflection, a hand broke through the water and grabbed it. The feed cut to static. Harper sobbed. "She's coming." The cabin lights exploded, plunging them into darkness. In the strobing flash of Jonah's malfunctioning headlamp, they saw her, standing in the doorway, a bride, soaked and decayed, veil clinging to her hollow face, eyes like black glass. Water dripped from her fingertips, pooling across the wooden floor. She took a step forward. The boards groaned. Ethan raised the camera, trembling but determined. "Who are you?" he whispered. Her mouth moved, but the sound came from everywhere at once. "Tell," and drown. The next flash of light showed her only inches from him. The camera fell to the floor, spinning, catching the chaotic blur of movement. Jonah pulling Harper toward the back door. Sarah screaming. Ethan shouting her name. Then the sound of rushing water filled the air, as if the entire lake was pouring into the cabin. The footage ended there. When the backup system synced the following morning, only fragments of the night remained. Distorted audio, static-filled frames, and one image captured at 3:06 a.m. A shot of the cabin from across the lake, half submerged, the windows glowing faintly from within. 2 weeks later, a fisherman found an abandoned van near the forest road. Inside was a half-filled camera bag, a soaked field notebook, and one audio recorder still running. The battery was nearly dead. When the police recovered it, they found a single voice whispering over the static. Not Ethan, not Harper, not Jonah. Sarah. Double quotes. She made us tell the story. The voice said, weak and wet with tears. She needs people to know, but if we tell it, she takes us back. Then a long pause. And then, quietly, the sound of footsteps on wet wood. The file ended with a splash. No bodies were recovered. No equipment found beyond what had already been posted online. But a month after the footage surfaced, the video mysteriously reappeared on a new YouTube channel under the same title as the first. Spectral Solutions, The Bride of Hollow Lake, recovered the upload date, the anniversary of the first team's disappearance. Comments under the video appeared for one night only before being wiped, but a few were screenshotted before deletion. One simply read, I watched the whole thing. I swear, I heard crying from my bathroom afterward. She said my name through the speakers. The lake doesn't need to be visited anymore. It's already here. The channel has remained active ever since, posting random black screen videos with faint static that spikes at 2:13 a.m. every night. No one knows who's uploading them. No one's supposed to, because Hollow Lake doesn't need stories anymore. It just needs listeners. And tonight, you've just become one. Needs listeners. And tonight, you've just become one. This story only exists because Liam, in the weeks that followed, posted bits and pieces of it on obscure paranormal forums before his account went completely silent. And because Maya sent one last, terrified email to another investigation team, begging them to stay away from Hollow Lake before she, too, disappeared without a trace. Their final fates are unknown. There are no ghost stories about Hollow Lake because the bride collects the stories and the storytellers. Her grief and rage wipe the slate clean every single time someone learns her secret. And now, you know the truth of Hollow Lake. So let me ask you, what would you have done? Let me know in the comments below. 4 more stories that dig up the darkness others try to keep buried. Make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. Be careful what legends you go looking for. You might just become one.